start recording and then we'll get going. Do my intro here. Okay, so today we are joined by Michigan State alumni who won the NCAA tournament MVP. He was the 21st pick in the first round of the 1988 NHL entry draft by the Calgary Flames. Played for the Calgary Flames, Hartford Whalers, New York Rangers, and the San Jose Sharks. He also played for the Italian national team in the 2006 Olympics. After his playing career, he went on to coaching and now is the goaltender development coach for the Carolina Hurricanes. He's also the co-founder of Just Goalies, a successful goalie camp, the link of which will be in the bio. Jason Muzzatti. So thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me.
Sounds good, Preston. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was your college career. So you are from Canada. So why did you decide to go the college route versus major junior?
You know what? I was lucky. I had an older brother that went the college route. So I saw kind of the benefits of it. He played 4 years. His last year, he got injured. He got a real good degree and he got a great job out of the deal. So it was like a kind of a firsthand example for me. So when I got drafted to the OHL, it was a little easier for me to turn them down just because I knew kind of the benefits of going to school.
Okay. How was your experience playing college hockey? Was the style of play different between, I guess, playing in Canada and then coming to, I guess, we're primarily like U.S. players are?
Well, it's funny, it was just amazing to step on the ice of Michigan State for the green and white game and, have the band blaring and, the rink was full. Michigan State hockey in the 80s was a tough ticket to get. So it was definitely an increase in the intensity level and the, just the excitement of the arena. So that was, that was a natural adjustment, obviously, to go along with the speed adjustment and, the strength adjustment of all the players. But, I came out of this Toronto, used to be called the Metro Toronto Junior B League. And, we had a lot of guys get scholarships. So it was a real good kind of preparatory league for college.
Okay. And then not to glance over your college career, but to move on to pros. So you get drafted in the first round. What was that experience like? Did you know you were going to go in the first round? Were you talking to teams prior to the draft?
Well, it's funny, right? So that's back in 1988. So there was no really advanced press clippings or tweets or anything. I literally played my freshman year. And at the end of the year, I had a conversation with somebody. They told me I was the top rated goalie for the draft. I had no idea. So I was like, so I should go to the draft? And they're like, yes, you should go to the draft. And I went to the draft. I'd only talked to, honestly, a couple teams prior to the draft. And back then there were only 21 teams. And Calgary was one of the two that I spoke to. They had the 21st. They actually didn't have the 21st pick. Philadelphia passed on it and gave it to Calgary based on a deal they had. So then they took me with the last pick of the first round.
That's awesome. I find that I've heard that a couple of times from, I guess, older players that they had no idea or like they weren't as aware of the draft or players getting drafted, not hearing about it versus today. There's player rankings. Like everybody kind of knows like who's going to go what. And it's pretty elaborate now.
Yeah, it's probably better that way, right? I had no idea what was going on, sort of oblivious to everything, just focused on playing. And then it was like, really? I'm rated that high. So it was a nice surprise for the off season anyways. So
right. So once you got to pro, you started in the IHL. What was that transition like going from college hockey to professional hockey?
I love the change because, now I didn't have to deal with school. So like it was literally, you could focus so much more on your game and spend more time at the rink. I really thrived in that pro atmosphere. So my first year in Salt Lake went really, really well. And, I had a great coach. I just love that sort of pro atmosphere. The IHL was like the American League today back then. It was high level hockey. So it it was a great experience. A lot of good players, guys that ended up in the NHL, and it was again, it's a step up, right, with speed and strength and stuff. But the same token, it was, as a aspiring hockey player, you want that challenge, right? You want to play
Right.
at the highest level. So it was something that you embraced, and it was really cool experience.
Awesome. And then you got your first NHL start with Calgary, correct? Did you have I know players often talk about like their welcome to the NHL moment. Do you remember yours if you have one?
Well, for sure. I didn't I got my first game was in Los Angeles, and that's when Gretzky was playing there. And it was probably about 7, 8 games into the season. I think they were like 7-1 or 6-1, and they threw me in. And literally 5 minutes into the game, my maybe even less, my main strap. If you remember goalie pads back then, you have a main strap that would go around the heel of your skate through your skate there, and it was your main strap. It snapped in half. So I went over to the bench and I looked at the trainer, and he's like, put your foot up, and he literally put tape around my pad in the back of my heel. So I played my first NHL game with tape all around my ankles and my pad. So it was
Wow.
that was a bit of the first, the welcome to the league. And then the first goal I gave up was Alexei Zhitnik shot it from the point, and Robert Reichel was on my team, and he lifted his foot up and it hit his toe and went into the net. That was the first goal I gave up against the Kings, and it was quite the experience. Gretzky ended up getting, I think, 4 points, and we lost 8-5. So it was, obviously a different era. I kind of thought I played okay, but it was 8 goals to 5. Kelly Rudy was the goalie in the other end, so it was a great experience.
Was that surreal playing against Gretzky for the first time, or is that
Yeah,
like
it was so weird, and in that game, there's a couple names you probably recognize. One's Luc Robitaille. He scored 2 goals. Another guy named Thomas Sandstrom scored 2, and Gretzky was playing with those guys, and it was 7-5, in the last minute, and Gretzky got the puck in the corner, and those 2 guys were out in the slot, and I thought, okay, he's passing one of these 2 to get a hat trick, and he actually banked it in off my skate below the goal line. So that was like the kind of culmination of welcome to the league, and don't think you're going to outsmart Wayne Gretzky, So it was quite the experience.
that's something I always wonder. One of my cousins plays professional hockey, and I always ask him, I'm like, hey, do you think like you're on the ice with Sidney Crosby? Do you think about it? And I always find that like some guys will kind of play it off like, oh no, we're just out there, and then other guys are like, oh, it's a very cool experience to be on the ice with these guys who are future NHL Hall of Famers.
Yeah, it was such a rush. It was, again, it kind of goes back to what I said about going into my first year in the minors. It's just, you want that challenge, right? That's why you play the game, to try to play at the highest level possible. So it was really cool playing against those guys. And then later in my career, I got to play with Gretzky, so
Right.
I saw him even more up close and what an amazing player he was. So it was definitely a cool experience.
I was gonna ask you about the playing with Gretzky later, but we'll get to it now. A lot of guys will say when they play with a superstar teammate that like every day in practice they're doing stuff that they've never seen before. They're the greatest player they ever seen in person. Did you feel that way with Wayne, to where like just watching him you knew?
Well, he loved the game, and he practiced hard. He was, I mean, he had to do commercials all the time and all different things, but he was always at practice, and he always practiced hard. And I really thought he had fun playing the game. He loved to be out there, and he'd do extra, and I saw him do some things. He beat Dominik Hasek high over the glove 2 times in a row one night when we were in Buffalo, and we got on the plane after, and I never harassed him at all, but I was curious. I just said, were you looking for something particular? And he just kind of winked at me, and because it's pretty impressive to beat Dominik Hasek, high glove, basically 2 times in a row. And he's just obviously a brilliant player. So it was really cool to practice with him too.
Yeah, I can't imagine being with someone of that caliber. So I guess whenever you're up and down a bit, and then you got to the Hartford Whalers, and that's kind of when you made your, I guess, started to get more consistent starts. Um, what I guess at that point was the biggest difference you saw between the AHL and the NHL from a goaltender standpoint? Were the shots coming harder for the players? Was it just the game moved faster?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of all of the above. Um, in the NHL, everyone does their job, so there's fewer mistakes. There's fewer, um, maybe where guys are trying to do too much. So for me, the way I process the game, it kind of fit my game. So getting claimed by Hartford was a relief because Calgary had I was a first rounder. They had Trevor Kidd, who was the first rounder drafted by the new GM at the time. And then we'd started drafting Europeans then. So we had a Russian goalie named Andrei Trefilov, who I think he went like the 12th round, but he would have been a first rounder as well if it was more common back. You know what I mean? They weren't
Mm,
sure if the Russians were going to come over or not. So they literally had the three of us and Mike Vernon in Calgary at the same time with no real plan. So it turned out that Trefilov went to Buffalo. I went to Hartford. Kidd and Vernon stayed in Calgary. So I was thrilled to go to Hartford and get the opportunity there. And honestly, it was just, I felt ready for it. I'd been in the minors and, I had time in Calgary, but I didn't play much where I felt like I was ready after 4 years. I was ready for the chance, and so I certainly appreciate Hartford giving me that opportunity.
I guess kind of stringing off that comment, do you think that that's, I guess, harmful to players now? How a lot of guys don't spend as much time in the minors. These high round picks are kind of put in the NHL right away, and then I guess either labeled bust or no bust like right away. Like, I don't know. I feel like that happens a lot.
No, you're right. I don't know about harmful, but I think it's beneficial to spend time in the minors. I mean,
Mm,
no one wants to do it, especially today's world, right? You young guys, you want instant gratification, right? So, now obviously I know we're not talking about what I'm doing now, but I deal with young players, and a lot of guys can't handle maybe some it's not necessarily rejection, but it's just not everyone's ready right away at 18 to play in the league.
right.
I don't know what the stats are on that, but it playing in the minors, I think it humbles you, and it teaches you to work and grind for something, and I think it teaches you how to deal with adversity. So when you get to the NHL, it's full of adversity, and I do think that guys can maybe be better adjusted if they have that experience, and so I think it's a valid point by you. I really think there's value to going there and playing well in the minors. Like, I spent a lot of time with our American League team in Chicago, and that's a high quality league. It's a really good league, and if you go there and think you're above that league, you're in trouble right away. You got to respect wherever you're playing, and you got to produce wherever you're playing, and then you get that opportunity. So I think there's a huge benefit to playing in the minors.
Okay. And then, so after Hartford, you go to the Rangers. What was it like playing in Madison Square Garden for the first time?
Well, it's funny. I was psyched to go to the Rangers just because they had traditionally used their backup goalie a lot. So I
Mm,
was I was kind of looking forward to that opportunity, but they didn't play me at home. I never got a start at home.
really?
Yeah, they played Richter all the time at home, and he was an amazing goalie. But one night he got pulled against the Flyers, and I think we were down 3-1 or 3-0, and I came in. I got to play a good portion of the game in the Garden. It was cool. It was such a cool place, and we ended up tying, I think, 4-4, and it was, I think I got one of the stars. It was cool. It was like you always hear about the Garden, right? So it was kind
Mm,
of really cool to play there as a Ranger. Even though it was a brief time.
yeah. And then you spent, so I guess after your time in North America, you went over to Europe for a bit and you played in Italy. and you won 3 championships in a row in the Italian Pro League.
Yeah.
Was that like some of the most fun you've ever had playing?
Oh, for sure. I kind of feel a kinship with the Italians. My parents were born in Italy, so kind of a reason I went to the Italian League is you needed to play a couple of years in the Italian League to get eligible for the Olympics if you had an Italian passport, which I got through my parents, right? So, but those guys, I felt really connected to those guys. There was, I think each team had 5, import players, so it was a competitive league, and I love I love the lifestyle, and those championships meant a lot to me. It was a great experience.
I feel like I guess being in Italy, getting to play hockey at the same time would be amazing. Were you guys, I guess, well known around town or
No, not at
no?
all. So, soccer's king there. So
Mm.
I played in Milan, so they had the 2 teams, Inter and AC Milan. Those guys were the big dogs, but there was a hockey niche. There's, hockey's got a little niche in northern Italy, but I mean, when we were in playoffs, winning championships, the rink was full, and they had another special rink called the Forum that they'd use every once in a while, which would hold, over 10,000, which was kind of cool to play in too. But there was a long hockey history there, but in terms of being recognized, no, that wasn't the case there.
And I feel like a lot of the hockey fans in Europe have that soccer mentality where they just go absolutely nuts at the games. I think I've seen the videos in I don't know if it's Sweden or Finland or something like that, but they have smoke grenades in the stands and they're waving flags and they're going crazy. Was it a similar experience for you?
Totally. My first stop was in Berlin. That was the first place I went to Europe before Italy. And I remember the first game, I had no idea. They sang the whole game, and then, we won the game. At the end, they called certain players out to do a little dance routine and do, it was cool. It was like a different element, and I loved it, actually. I thought it was great spirit and great fan support. So it was it's definitely a unique experience.
Right,
Any
having
hockey
that.
fan should get over there and catch games sometime.
Yeah, I would like to go over to Europe and see a game. I feel like it'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So you played in the Olympics too. How was that? That must be an incredible experience getting able to represent your country like that.
Yeah, it really was. I was 36 at the time, which was kind of cool. So I was a little older and kind of take it all in. And
Mm.
we played Canada in the opening game. So we walked out. I walked out alongside Brodeur, and got to play those Canadian guys. And we were huge underdogs. We ended up we played 5 games. We tied 2 games out of the 5, and we kind of held our own against the big dogs. So it was a great experience. Really cool to be a part of that. I went to go see some other sports too, and the opening ceremonies. They had Pavarotti, and they had like they brought out a Ferrari, and the guy was doing like spin outs, and he did the Olympic rings on stage, which was cool. And yeah, it was, and they had Bocelli out there, so it was really cool to kind of take it all in at that kind of a later, almost near my retirement.
Mhm. And then, so I guess moving on to your coaching, you finished your career with the Flint Generals in the UHL at the time, and then 2 years later, you're the assistant coach. Did you still have buddies on the team?
Yeah, I did know a couple guys still, so it was a little more goalie coaching. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't. I think they just listed me as the assistant coach, but obviously I was around the guys, so it was a little different. But I was still a lot older than them, so it wasn't like
Okay.
guys my age that I was coaching. But it was a nice transition for me to into coaching. It was I was player assistant that year that I played for Flint, so it was. That was something they did back then in the league. So it kind of allowed me to dip my feet into the coaching thing. And yeah, it was kind of cool. It was sort of a neat transition.
And then you went in, were a volunteer goaltending coach, I believe it said, for Michigan State. I guess you've coached pro and you've coached college, and that kind of coaching comparison is used a lot in football because in college you have a lot more control over the players and as far as like I guess their day-to-day life versus pro.
Yeah.
Did you find coaching in college easier at all?
Um, it wasn't too much of a huge difference. I think the college guys probably lean on you a little bit more. Most pro guys, they kind of know what they need to do. They just need a little sort of fine tuning on stuff. But, each sort of has its challenges, but I love Michigan State obviously. And, I was happy to chip in there, and it was a great experience, and it helped prepare me for the NHL.
Right. So then the 2019-2020 season, you become the goaltending coach for the Carolina Hurricanes. You had Peter Mrazek there, James Reimer at the time. I believe I should have checked. What was it like kind of going into your first job or role as an NHL goalie coach? And I guess what's your mindset going in? Because these guys are already so skilled and talented. Like, do you kind of have an idea for each goalie of what you want to work on?
Well, I felt comfortable there. Obviously, having played in the league, and like you're right, they're two kind of veteran guys that it's more that you're like a manager and facilitator versus a guy that's got to constantly be in their ear and giving them tips or something. So it takes a little time to build a relationship, and I think it's important to gain some sort of mutual respect, and then it's goalies talking goalie stuff, and it's a delicate balance. I feel like that's one of my strengths, knowing maybe when to talk to a guy about something or when to leave a guy alone. Because I really don't think you should always be in a guy's ear. And they were great guys. Peter had a unique style to James, so you couldn't just do the same thing with both of them. And they were both real respectful. I thought we had a great rapport, and we had a good little first round win against the Rangers, and then we went down to the Bruins there. It was that year in the bubble, but I thought the goalies did a heck of a job in the playoffs. So it was a great experience.
Okay. So now I kind of got more of my goalie specific questions. I was a player my whole career. I never think I played one goalie as like a mite. So if you have
Yeah.
anything to add to these, please do. But my first question is, I feel like skating is the one key thing that you have to be a player in the NHL, right? Like obviously everyone has to have some sort of hockey smarts to them, but like if you can't keep up, then you don't really have much of a chance. Is there a goaltender equivalent skill that you kind of have to be able to play in the NHL or at these higher levels?
Well, that's a great question. I think guys, there's various sets of skills, and guys, kind of master maybe a couple, but skating is huge. I mean, a guy needs to move efficiently around the net, but obviously it's a different kind of skating. It's more, I guess we'd call it footwork, and moving around on your edges. That's definitely a critical point. I think hockey sense or goalie sense, like a goalie needs to know how to read the play and what's coming to him. That might be one of the most important ones. But and then you obviously need a natural sort of athleticism to
Right.
play as well. It doesn't mean every guy's got to have to do the splits or anything. I wasn't a very flexible goalie, and there's different ways that way, but I think you obviously need a little foundation. So I think everyone's sort of got their strengths, but you need to be good at a few of those things. And I'm curious, though, I got to ask you, so why are you doing the goalie thing if you were a forward? That one time in the mites that give you the bug, or what?
A friend of mine was he that I played hockey with my whole life pretty much. He started a goalie YouTube channel posting like highlights, breaking in gloves, his playing, and he didn't want it anymore. So I took it over for him, and I can't just completely change topics. So I figured I'll interview goalies, goalie coaches, and kind of ask the questions that I guess I wish I could have asked as a player to
Cool.
someone involved in scouting and developing players.
That's great.
So yeah, I figured I'd keep it on
That's
topic.
awesome. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I had to ask it.
So what do you see, I guess what do you guys struggle with the most going from whether it be junior to the AHL to the NHL? Is there, I guess, one part of the game that you see get or see players get caught up on the most?
You know, it's funny. I think confidence is a huge thing.
Mm.
Um, you got guys that kind of step in and the transition's seamless. So, it's kind of hard maybe to pinpoint that in a guy, whether he's got it in him or not.
Right.
But that might be the biggest thing is just a guy that steps in and looks like he's been there before. Like last night, Jackson Stauber stepped in for the Blackhawks, played his first NHL game. I said Rob was his dad, who also played in the NHL, but here's a young guy going into his first game, and he looked, he looked pretty calm in there. He looked pretty composed. So that's a tremendous trait for a goalie,
Right.
more than really any sort of physical skill, to be honest with you. And so that's for me a huge sort of box check when we bring guys into, like, say, training camp or stuff, and they don't seem overwhelmed.
Mm.
So because it's something, it's a probably human reaction to be overwhelmed. So if you got a guy that can kind of rise above that, that's pretty impressive.
That kind of, I guess, ties into one of my other questions is what's the first thing you look for if you're going to, I guess, scout a goalie or see a goalie for the first time? What are those things that you're looking for?
Well, it's funny, it's for me, I like, we're drafting 18-year-olds mostly, some 19 and 20-year-olds, but when you're looking at these guys, you look at their resumes, if they've played some higher level hockey. So, like, for instance, if it's a European, let's say Jesper Wallstedt plays in Iowa. He was drafted by Minnesota in the first round a couple of years ago. He was playing in the SHL, which is the Swedish Elite League, which is a men's league,
Right.
and so here's an 18-year-old that we're thinking of drafting that has already played against men and he's been successful, versus a goalie who's playing juniors,
Mm.
who's maybe got 93% save and he's done everything great. But for me, if a guy's got that kind of experience, that's a huge box check right away, right?
Mm.
He's showing that he can kind of make that adjustment to the next level. So, obviously you look for all those skills like we talked about, like, an athletic foundation and, good skating and reading the play and stuff. But it's kind of that intangible thing of a guy that just doesn't look out of place and looks comfortable at a high level.
Okay. So I heard like most recently or in I guess recent years in hockey that everyone's been talking about how the skill level has been increasing at a ridiculous pace. Um, I guess I'm not really in touch with goalies that much, so I don't know if do you think the goalie skill level is increasing at the same rate as the player skill level as far as like Austin Matthews has that started the angle change on his shot, right? Is there like I guess skills and goalies that are also kind of going up to combat this?
Well, I think that the position has evolved where, it's been a while now, but where goalies take away the percentages. So it's almost like
Mm.
analytics have been thrown into goaltending with, covering down low and the way they seal the post and do different things. I mean, straight up, if Matthews comes in on me and I'm still in my prime, um, he should beat me with that, the way these guys can shoot the puck now.
Right.
It's about anticipating, the puck off the stick and what's going on around you and trying to gain an edge that way. But I really think that the players have taken a huge step and the goalies have just kind of, I think they're more athletic goalies for sure, versus maybe in my era. But I think it's just about taking away the percentages and trying to make it as hard as possible on guys to score. But like I said, straight up, Matthews doing an angle change one-on-one, that's a heck of a challenge for a goaltender to stop.
So Is the difference between an NHL starter and then I guess a backup, is that skill level or is that difference between them finite? Like once you get to that level, whether it be AHL and NHL, like I'm assuming most goaltenders, their skill levels are fairly equal. Is it more of a mental game at that point?
It's more of who's been handed the ball sort of and has the confidence.
Mm,
I always used to say, like, when I started, I was mainly an NHL backup. When I started, I was the starter, right?
mm,
I mean, when I'm playing, they say, "Oh, the backup's playing. Oh, he's starting," right? So I think when you get all those starts under your belt, it's so much easier to play. Like,
right.
Hellebuck plays 60 games. He never thinks about it. Like, he doesn't have to. Now, he's earned that, but you look at a guy like um, who backed him up a year ago. Maybe it was Comrie who only played 15 games. That's really hard. Like,
Mm,
so you're playing once every 2 to 3 weeks. That's really hard. And, unless you played the position, you have no idea how hard that is. Because when you're in the flow and you're the number one, you just don't think about stuff. And, a goal against isn't that big of a deal because you've got you sort of got a larger um, um, pool that, you know what I mean? So one
mm,
goal out of 40 and, in 80 games isn't a big deal, right? Whereas, one goal for a backup that's not playing that often, it can cost you another start again, and I think coaches, um, they have a hard time trusting backups because of that. They're just, I think they're nervous. They want to go with the guy that they're comfortable with all the time, but it's they don't realize how hard they're actually making it on the backup. So I love to, if I'm coaching a team and I'm the head guy, I love to mix in the second guy and make sure he's got a regular routine. Doesn't mean you're splitting even, but just where he's got enough action to stay in the flow because
mm.
it's a really hard position to jump in and out of every couple of weeks.
Well, even as a player, if I got like a shift or two a period, right? Like even that's difficult. And then again, same thing. You're such a shorter rope that if you make one mistake, it's a lot bigger of a deal. But I feel like that's another thing that's kind of more recent in the NHL is having that like a goalie team, right? Like two good goalies who can kind of work with each other. I feel like some teams are kind of going towards that versus having one stud.
Well, a lot more goalies are getting hurt, and back to back in the NHL is a killer. So, some teams, only a couple teams, I think, will roll their guys back to back, and it's hard on the goalie. And analytics don't really support playing the guy back to back. So kind of everything pushes towards having that other guy that's useful. So I think for that and the injury reason, it's important to mix in a second guy for sure. But I just don't know that everybody knows how to do that appropriately. Like I said.
Mhm. So you also started or co-founder of Just Goalies. Do you still is that something that you still do?
It's kind of just a local sort of goalie camp
Mm,
in the area here. It was just kind of a neglected area, so I do some stuff when I can, but it's I don't have a lot of time these days. But it's like I said, I did it when I was still playing. It kind of was a cool way to sort of transition, learn some coaching, and actually, I think when you coach your position or teach it, you actually learn more yourself. Believe it or
mm.
not. So it was kind of a win-win scenario, and I enjoyed working with the young youth kids. They're awesome. So I love seeing the young goaltenders. So
Now there might be a guy or two who's in that area watching, so I'll post the link to your website in the
I
description. Maybe
appreciate it.
someone will
Thank
check them
you.
out.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, we got 5 minutes left before my timer runs out. I'm trying to think if I have anything else I wanted to ask you. I tried to put together as many goalie questions as I could. Oh, here's one. So when I was growing up, having a quick release was something that like everyone always told us need a quick release, need a quick release. And now I feel like you see it more with guys like Cole Caulfield, for example, how fast he gets the puck off his stick. Connor Bernard. Like he's another guy that's coming up that just gets the puck off really quick. Is there something that goalies can do to kind of, I guess, train or practice for that?
That's a great question. It's really just repetition and reading the release. But I guess the flip side of it is, and it's a great point by you, it for goal scorers out there, it's don't worry about dusting it off. Get the puck off.
Right.
That's what makes it hard for a goalie. Like, I watch 1,000 videos a day, it feels like, but if you're watching a guy and you're watching the highlights, and it cracks me up a lot of times on TV, like, oh, the goalie should have had that one or this and that. They've got no idea that it was kind of a release of the puck that maybe the goalie didn't expect. And that's really what beat him. That's why he didn't cover his 5-hole or get his glower, because he didn't expect the puck to be released at that point. And now you can kind of say, well, how can the goalie not expect to be released? It's like, the guy's kind of in maybe mid-move, or maybe he's in a position where you wouldn't traditionally expect a shot, and all of a sudden he lets it go. And it's just really that millisecond that can make the difference with scoring a goal on a goalie. And so it's kind of anyone that's non-goalie out there, it's a good sort of lesson. But for goalies, honestly, Preston, it's just repetition. Goalies got to play a lot of games and be in that scenario. And it's hard to get a lot of games because there's only 2 positions on every team. I talk to junior goalies all the time, and it's like, I just want a chance. And it's just hard because you got coaches that don't want to play backups. They hate playing rookie goalies because they don't trust it. So it's like, when's the guy ever get a chance? It's usually because of injury, where a guy, they're forced to play a goalie, right? And, I think when a goalie can get that game experience, it's just like, it's money in the bank and your money in your pocket. You're just learning the game, and it kind of goes in the memory banks. And then the next time that quick release comes, you're just a little more ready for it. It's just kind of how it is. It's a game of experience. I was best when I was a 37-year-old goaltender. I knew how to read everything efficiently. You know what I mean? When I was in my 20s, I thought I knew it all, but that's when I was up in my 30s, like, boom, it was just way more efficient. It's just from all the experience. That's all it is. It's a position of experience.
I was in juniors when I learned that. I had like an open skate in the summer. We had a goalie. I don't remember what league he played in, somewhere better than me, and I was shooting on him. And I don't remember what I asked him, but he told me, he was like, after the third time you shot on me, I could tell where you're going before you shot the puck every time. And I was like, damn, maybe that's why I'm not scoring enough goals. So yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
It was interesting. Okay, well, that's all I got for you. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and hopefully this helps some goalies out.
Preston, you did a great job. I appreciate the questions. I thought they were really good. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Best of all the goalies out there. Hang in there. Stick together. We only support, or only each other. We only understand each other. So, and Preston, you're part of the loop. You're part of the union.
I'll try and get in there now.
Thanks very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You have a good
All
one.
right. Take care. We'll see you there.